That joke isn't funny anymore. Available on Amazon and everywhere. Is that screaming on your end?
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the kids. That's me. All the kids are home. I warned them not to disturb me. They're used to this now. But if there's a random scream, I apologize.
Well, you might be competing with my 4-year-old and 2.5-year-old. So.
Oh, okay. All right,
yeah,
good.
we're gonna have random screams just coming. It's gonna be like a horror, like a haunting.
That's right.
I'm just gonna get a cough out. All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast. I'm your host, Lou Perez, and today I am joined by Peachy Keenan, whose latest book, Domestic Extremist: A Practical Guide to Winning the Culture War. And mine is a hardcover. Nice. I think it's available in soft cover as well, and audiobook. So
that's right. Yeah.
There we go. Peachy, do you read the audiobook?
I did read it. I spent a week in a studio reading that thing.
Yeah. I recorded the audiobook for my book, and I had no idea it would take so long.
Oh my gosh, it's such a slog. It's crazy.
So you had like a week where you were dedicated to it. You were able to go to the studio and make it happen.
Yeah, it was like 9 to 1. They found a place near my house, and so the kids were in school, and I would just sit there and like pop cough drops, and the minute they hit record, you like suddenly have to sneeze every time or cough. It's like really tough. I admire people who do that for a living. It's really crazy.
Yeah, when I did it. I was working with a friend, and it was basically any time that we could get studio time. So there would be, sometimes weeks of separation. And there was one time where we got studio space Friday night in Brooklyn. And the problem is I'm all the way out in New Jersey. So I left at like rush hour to go from here to Brooklyn. And it took me like 3 hours to get just to the studio. And then when I got there, I was just a wreck of a human being. And I said, I think I might be able to read like one chapter. And I think that's all. But people forget, because if it comes out, it sounds good, that they don't care what you went through for that.
Right. It's so grueling. God bless those editors who have to go through and like take out all your mistakes, all my mistakes. It's nuts. I can't believe people do it. But like, you can't really have it like an AI do it or an actor do it. If you have a book that's sort of written in like your voice, you kind of have to do it as a writer. But it sucks.
Mm-hmm. When you write, do you read your stuff out loud? Not just the audio book, but just sort of like out loud as you're writing it to get how it sounds and stuff?
No, never. I don't have time for that. I mean, that's one of the recommendations like you get in like a writing class, like always read it out loud. Right. But I never have time. I do read. Sometimes I'll if I'm like practicing a speech or something, but if it's not something that generally is going to be read out loud, I don't. Although when you are reading the audiobook, you do catch things. You do think, oh, there's too much alliteration, or I repeated a word. And then you're like, oh no, it's too late. It's done. So I probably should do that, but I haven't really. I'm lazy. I'm too lazy.
Yeah, I went to grad school for creative writing. So there would be times that we would get together and people would do, like a reading at a bar, and it'd be a number of people would read their stories. And really, the only reason why anyone was going there was to drink and hang out.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, here's this 25-page fiction, piece of fiction, and he's going to read it out loud, and he's terrible as a reader, and it's just it could be really, really painful if you were going that.
That's tough. Yeah, reading a short story to a crowd would be tough. That's a tough ask of anyone. Yeah.
So I absolutely love the title of the book, and I love the artwork on the book too, because Domestic Extremist. And is this embroidery or crochet? Like, what is
it's called cross stitch.
Cross stitch.
And so I didn't actually do it, but it was my concept to kind of make it like funny, to look like a crocheted pillow at your grandma's house, And so the cover artist, he understood my concept perfectly. So what he did was he kind of executed it digitally.
Mm.
But then for like realism, he actually found a cross stitch like artist on Etsy and had her do an actual stitched thing like that copied the digital thing. And then she mailed him her like piece and he photographed it. And so the cover's a photograph of a real actual cross-stitched, artwork that was modeled on a digital, which is really cool. I mean, it worked out. It came out so better than I could have dreamed.
Did she know what she was doing, like, or who she was doing it for?
I have no idea. She was in the South, so maybe she wasn't like a progressive liberal who wants to be dead now. So, but no, I have no idea. I think she was fine with it. I hope.
Yeah. It would be amazing if this was a sort of a conservative version of like Bake the Cake, like Bake the Wedding. Right. I refuse to do cross stitch.
Yeah.
For this domestic extremist,
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, like there are certain crafting communities that like I would not advise a conservative to enter. Like there's certain like knitting circles in LA, probably in Brooklyn, where it's like heavily shit lib progressive like fanatics, and so they probably like those kind of women would probably not have been keen on doing this.
Yeah, I remember because your book and so much of your writing is on sort of like these culture wars, and it is amazing on just how deep and niche culture wars go. Because I remember hearing about like knitting communities, and you would think what could they possibly be arguing over? These people who I guess get together and say, oh, here, I made this scarf, but it seems like it's like in those communities where it's almost like the purity tests seem to be some of the strongest.
Yeah, I mean, women can be the most, for all their like feminist blather and like the sisterhood, that's fake. They're like the most vicious police of their social circles. I feel like men are much more flexible about like hanging out with someone who's not, perfectly in sync with every single opinion that they have. Women are not like that in my experience. You step out of line just like a little bit. Not only are you out, but they'll like get the group against you and you're done. And actually this happens on the right and the left. Okay. And I have experienced both sides of like stepping out of bounds of what you're allowed to say as a woman among female communities. Maybe this is like the longhouse, that concept of the longhouse, like women like policing other women, but it's very extreme. It's probably more extreme on the left. I've been like kicked out of all my like liberal friend groups. Like they're done. Like I understand that. I get that. But when it comes from the right, it's a little surprising. I'm not sure what is going on there. It's much more subtle, but it's still there. And it doesn't happen among my like, male friends. And they seem like much more chill about, women with opinions or whatever. So it's a really, it's weird to be like a woman, right wing, Twitter anon, it's sort of like, where do I go? Where do I fit? I don't know. At least, we're friends. So.
Yeah. What were some of the, like maybe like one main issue or some of the issues that got you, in trouble, like with your friends on the left, and the one that got you like in trouble with your friends on the right?
Well, with the left, ones on the left, I think, once I had like my fourth child, they kind of figured out that I was no longer one of them. Right. I have 5 kids.
That's such a way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like once you have 4, like you're a fanatic, you're a radical, like you're weird. You're like, they accused me of being Mormon. They were like, what are you doing? Like, why didn't you abort that one? And so that was the first thing that I became a Catholic, and that was freak out mode. And then, being pro-life, and then like, expressing, positive opinions about Donald Trump. That was, that's a no. That's just, you're now, you might as well just put the full like Ku Klux Klan hood on, like you're done. But on the right, so just like the classic liberal, they're shibboleths. They have a very strict, you have to be completely in line with all those things. On the right, women are much more like disorganized. It's not as monolithic as it is on the left. There isn't this just like Hillary Clinton pro-choice feminist block and you must not step outside. On the right, it's much more fluid. There's Trump supporters, there's Trump haters, but generally it's like women who are, basically are disenchanted with feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And my book is basically about my disenchantment with feminism and my journey from like being a kind of a basic kind of, inch deep feminist to kind of my awakening and like rejecting all the things I had been taught from like age 15 to, my 20s, all through college. But among women on the right, I think some of them still cling to the idea of feminism or like a modified version of feminism. And so when someone like me is like making fun of, like longhouse women, like women who try to please women, or like this kind of like, this sort of like archetype, the stereotype of like a HR censorship hungry woman, a lot of them take offense that I'm criticizing all women, or like I'm saying that like women are bad. I hate women. Okay. I would say I don't hate women. But I think that some women interpret that there's like maybe you've seen this on Twitter, different platforms. There's like this feeling that right-wing men are misogynists, and like the reaction, left-wing men are like these male feminists, like, kind of like weaklings, they've been sort of overly feminized, but the right-wing men have taken it too far and that they actually hate women. And I don't agree with that. I think there's some misogyny on the right, I guess. But I think some people think maybe if I like am commenting about a left-wing woman that I also hate women. And I can just tell you, I do not hate women.
Okay. You know what? A lot of people are gonna just take that and they're gonna be like, I don't believe her. I think there's like, they could feel the hatred of,
that's right.
Of
exactly.
women. Well, what I find interesting though, when it comes to that, it seems like, at least in like online, on social media, it's okay to hate or to be very misogynistic against white women in particular, like the whole Karen meme and stuff like that, which I find odd, because it's sort of, for so long, feminism has been about wanting to make women equal and say, call out, hey, they're people just like everybody else, and they've been downtrodden, for all these, for centuries. But then it turns around, it's like, if it's a white woman, doing something, then that's something you could easily just throw at her, like, oh, shut up, you're being a Karen, you're calling the police, you're being a Karen, and all that. How do we get to that point? Because there's been a number of times when I've seen, quote unquote Karens, and I'm like, oh no, she actually has like the balls to call out something that's wrong, something that's happening, whether it's like a creepy person, doing something, or somebody being antisocial, the whole speaking to the manager thing. I mean, there's a lot of times when people aren't willing to do that because it's, it's awkward and confrontational and,
Right. I think that there is a movement to kind of resurrect Karen and defend Karen, and that, women are now scared to speak to the manager. They don't want to be called a Karen. And look where that's gotten us in terms of customer service. Anywhere you go, it's terrible everywhere, right? Because no one wants to be called a Karen. No one wants to be put on video, put on blast, like being like a bitch or whatever. And it has become, Karen is like this, it's like a brutal anti-white slur against white women who, I mean, there's something to that. There's like this annoying, like busybody, like vibe. I get that. But for example, when did it start? It sort of like, I think back to that like bird watching thing in Central Park.
Yeah.
Where that like white woman was in the park and some black guy was there and he was bird watching, but he had his dog off leash.
Oh,
and I think she was scared.
Oh, yeah, she's the one. She's the one who had her dog. So, yeah. So, and Cooper, both of their last names just completely unrelated, but they're Cooper. And yeah, apparently this guy, he's a bird watcher, and he goes to Central Park, and he gets really offended when people have their dogs off the leashes because I guess they're going to scare the birds away. So he had like some choice words with her.
Yeah, and then her life was like ruined and destroyed, and she was a racist, but like if any man came up to me in the woods, like I would be nervous, and I don't think that made her a racist. And I think that's sort of like where that kind of blew up. But I'll defend her. I mean, yeah, Amy Cooper. She got fired. Like life ruined. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think it was Camille Foster and Barry Weiss who did like a deep dive into that.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, to that whole fiasco,
Nice.
and brought out what the truth of what happened the guy openly admitted, I think over on Facebook when that was still a thing, he admitted that he had said something to her along the lines of like, watch your dog because I'll do something to your dog you won't like.
Yeah, right, exactly. He threatened her dog.
He threatened her dog, and I saw this guy recently on a clip from what was it? Democracy Now. I forget. Amy Goodman hosted. It's like I think a far left program, and he's on it. And this dude is huge. Right. Like I was just like if my shoulders are here, like this dude's shoulders were like up here. He's a big dude, and I don't think he just started lifting. I think that he's probably like a guy who's been in shape for a while. So the prospect, like you said, meeting a dude, coming across a guy in a forest, and him saying, "I'm going to do something to your dog, and you're not going to like it." That's a threat, Yep. And it's just, and how that was blown out of proportion or used as some kind of like racial reckoning. This white woman, this Karen using her white woman tears to to call the police and all that. It's like, it's like never ending. I mean, there's just so many examples of stuff like that.
Yeah, and women, I think because of that, I mean, you get accused of things like if you're a woman and you like don't want to get in an elevator, where there's if a man comes in, you don't want to be alone in an elevator, no matter what color he is. You're like not allowed to listen to your gut instinct. And women have a very primal, ancient gut instinct. Okay, that is important. Like, don't be alone with a strange man. Like, especially if he's like a big, strong man, or looks weird, or is threatening you, or just you don't do that. Like, and you teach your daughters, don't do that. But women have now been kind of psyoped into like, well, but if it's a black guy and you do that, you'll be canceled. He'll call you a racist. He'll video you being, not wanting to get in the elevator. And so women are like, well, I better suppress my instincts. But then that actually can get you killed. Mm-hmm. And I actually wrote an article about this called Say Her Name, about some liberal women who ignored their gut instinct. I don't know if you probably remember this case. I think it was like 3 years ago in LA, a girl from my hometown, Pacific Palisades, Brianna Kupfer. She was like 22, UCLA design student, very beautiful. She was working part-time at a design store on La Brea in LA, like a fancy furniture stretch of like stores, right? And she was working in there alone. And this like guy came in, and he was like kind of like a half schizophrenic black guy, young guy. He wandered into the store, and he, I've seen photos of him. He looked off. Okay. Yeah. Like he was something wrong with him, and he's not shopping for fancy furniture. Okay. He's not looking for a new sofa. And she texted her boss, like, I have a weird feeling this guy came in, he's creeping me out, whatever. Like a minute and a half later, she was bleeding to death from like 30 stab wounds.
Jesus.
And died. This guy, this is actually funny. That was in Mid-City. I live like, 45 minutes from there. He then came to my neighborhood. My husband saw him. We had seen his picture in the news. He saw him in like a liquor store down the street. And he was like, I think I just maybe saw that guy. And then they actually caught him like quarter mile from my house. So,
wow.
So that girl died because she had been taught, oh, this is a creepy guy, but because he's black, if I run and he's just then I'll be like Amy Cooper, the bird watching lady. Yeah. I can't leave. I have to like suppress my primal instinct, which is I don't want to be alone with this guy.
Yeah.
She's dead.
Yeah. I remember Ann Coulter wrote about someone else. I believe it happened in New York. This poor young girl was like going into her building and like either held the door open for the guy. Oh, yeah. But either way, like the guy got in, and I don't even want to like bring it back up to memory, but I mean, I know in short, the guy like tortured this woman and just did like horrific things to her. And and I look at it like as a guy, when specifically when I was living in Los Angeles. I mean, I'd like to talk to you about, you know, California.
Oh yeah.
When I was living in LA, and you know, one of the things about LA is, I mean, you could go every day wearing flip-flops. You know, you can kind of go like every day wearing flip-flops. And if you're like a comedian and your day job is questionable, you could kind of look like a bum most days, and, you know, grow your beard out. You could look like shit. That's what I'm saying. In LA, you could be beautiful or you could look like shit.
Sure.
But, you know, there would be times where if it was at night, and if I turn a corner and there's a woman maybe like, you know, 10 feet in front of me, instead of me continuing to walk behind her, I would cross the street, and I would just cross the street and just walk where there was nobody, because I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable.
You're a good guy.
You know, and, you know, watch, you know, all the, all the red pill guys or whatever, or the, you know, just walk away from women guys are like,
right.
You simp. But it's having an understanding of yourself as a man and what impact you can have on a woman just to make her feel freaking creepy, you know?
Right. I'm not trying to freak you out. Right. You're just not.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll freak you out if we're dating. Like that's when I wait. That's
right. Or if you're flirting with someone, you're allowed to.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. And, you know, I'm in New Jersey, but I'm from New York originally, and just seeing the way that I'm starting to define it as like there's a certain privilege where if you're like homeless and crazy and violent, like you're kind of allowed to get away with anything. But if I, a guy who has his shit together, was to do any of these things, I'd be, you know, locked away, or, you know, someone would put a bullet in me. And it's like, I feel like we've gone so far in the, you know, kind of, you know, grievance Olympics, where it's like, you know, oh, you know, you're the downtrodden. You have no choice but to act in this terrible antisocial way.
Yeah, our new aristocracy are the like schizophrenic guys with like feces down their pants, talking to themselves on the subway. Like that's who is running. That's who you're not allowed to like, you know, to like show total deference to them and let them do whatever they need to do. It's like these like royalty walking around. This is our new royalty. But these liberals who run these cities claim to want to protect women's, you know, reproductive rights and, you know, save women's lives, and worried about women's health and women having all the protections. Your daughter, you know, you hear them, your daughter will have fewer rights than your mother had without, you know, access to abortion or whatever. But meanwhile, these women in these cities are the ones bearing the brunt of this like this crazy new population of like privileged men. Like you said, there was just a 21-year-old woman in Central Park. Right, the guy like jumped. She was like sunbathing, which is stupid to do above, you know.
Oh, we just heard about that.
Yeah, she was like, it was like 102nd in like Central Park West. Like, don't go up there. But he jumped on her out of the bushes and tried to rape her at 3 p.m. And like, where's her protection? Like, what about that protection? Like, what about those rights to not get raped in broad daylight? That's my concern.
Yeah, I don't know if I've told this story before on my podcast, but when my wife was pregnant with our first son, our doctor was in Manhattan, and we were living in Brooklyn, so we would take the subway up. And my family, we have a butcher shop in Spanish Harlem, and I went to NYU from college, so I'm very familiar and comfortable with the subway. And what I would notice is back in the day, is when you were uptown, like in like Spanish Harlem or the Bronx, the crazies would kind of behave themselves because they knew if they would get out of hand, the locals would
take over.
Yeah, would you know, it would be a little bit of vigilante justice. Like, dude, shut your mouth, you sit down, you're going to get your ass kicked. But then when you get sort of down into the more, you know, affluent neighborhoods of Manhattan, that's when the crazy comes out, and they're, you know, asking for money and annoying people and all that. And I think it was really important for the city to have those lines of demarcation, you know, where that would happen. And then what I noticed is like sort of a similar thing. There was this sketchy dude, this Skell, as we would call him. You know, I don't know if he was coming from like the methadone clinic or whatnot, but he ends up like sitting next to my wife, who's pregnant. And then he takes out a plastic bag, and then he takes out a lighter. and he starts trying to light, he starts putting this like lighter by the place. He hasn't lit it yet. And we were down in the affluent area of, underground. And I grabbed his hand and I told him in Spanish, I said, my wife's pregnant. And I made it I made it very clear to him, I'm going to fucking murder you, dude, if you don't do this. And then he immediately, oh, I'm sorry, stopped and all that. But what I became afraid of later on in New York is that there would never be a guy who would do that, that my wife would be by herself or with our kid, by herself with our kid. Some guy would be acting incredibly, just terrible behavior, and nobody would step up to help her out. So that was one of the reasons why we got out of New York.
That's smart. Yeah. I mean, I think after Daniel Penny got arrested, and no one is going to step up again. I wrote an article about that too. Like after that happened, I told my sons, I have teenage boys and they like to lift, they like to be really strong. My oldest just deadlifted 600 pounds. Okay. Whoa. He's like, I know, 18, he's strong. But I said to him, like, you have to, if you ever come across that, like a psycho threatening people, you got to go get out of there. I don't need you, being like arrested for, attempted murder or assault or whatever. And like, I'm sorry, like, it's not worth it. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And it's sad. This is terrible. I don't want to tell young boys, like, don't be a hero, but you're going to be a hero. You're going to rot in jail. They're going to send Daniel Penny to Rikers. And I just think which is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
We need more men to act like that. But these women, again, women and men are being put at risk by these psychopaths. And I don't know, are these cities going to get their act together? Like, is there any hope for Manhattan or LA or San Francisco or Chicago? I don't know. It's sad. I love these cities. I spend so much time in all of them, but they are a mess.
Yeah. With that case in particular, I remember, and there were other incidents that had happened, like women being punched and stuff like that, just terrible things. Yeah. And I remember the refrain was often, screw them, they voted for this, which at the time I was like, well, you don't know how people voted. There are a lot of people who, aren't necessarily in favor of, the bail reform and all that, but they're stuck in the city and they have to deal with the consequences.
Right.
And I think it was less of, don't help because they voted for this, and more of don't help because, like you said, you're going to be arrested. You're going to go to prison over this. And I think it was only like a week or two after Daniel Penny, there was an incident on the subway where this guy, young black guy, was defending his girlfriend, stabbed a dude to death. And it wasn't even brought up on charges. And then I don't know if you know this, he turns around and says, yeah, Daniel Penny should be in jail for what he did. So it's like the dude who killed somebody with a knife, is saying that the guy who choked a guy, and it's even, out of it, it's still up in the air whether or not that the guy died in his arms, with that choke or as a result of it. Like even that guy is saying, yeah, that Marine, that hero should be in jail. Bonkers.
Wow. I thought they'd be natural allies, but I guess, is it, I don't know, racist? I don't know. That's super like super depressing, to be honest.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Well, to get over the depressing part, let's talk about California. So are you born and raised in California? I know. Yeah,
born.
You do a land acknowledgement in your book that I enjoyed.
It's very important to acknowledge that we're all on stolen land, including you guys in New York and New Jersey. Born and raised in Los Angeles near the beach. Then I went to college on the East Coast, and I spent a lot of time. I lived in New York and I lived in Europe and stuff. But then when I met my husband, we moved back. We met in New York. We moved back to LA because we wanted to have kids, and having kids in Manhattan seemed like really dumb. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, well, how do you get car seats into a taxi? Like that was what I couldn't figure out. Like, how do you install the car seat in the taxi?
Yeah.
And I would see women on the subway, and our subway stop was like the worst. It was like Lex and 63rd, like the worst.
Yep, I know that exactly. Yep.
The F train. Like I left New York because of having to take the F train, and it's like 4 escalators each escalator is like half a mile. You're going into the bowels of hell. And there's no elevator. And I see these women struggling with their stroller and like the diaper bag. And I was like, I ain't going out like that. Like, nope. I'm getting the minivan and I'm getting the like house in the suburbs. I am not doing this. And so we moved back. And so, I mean, LA can be great for that. You know, it's a great place. I mean, you're in Jersey. You know, it's nice to be not in the middle of the hell. But even in my like kind of exurb outside Los Angeles, it's all the pathologies of the city are creeping up. I mean, on the big thoroughfare near me, I will drive up and down it and I'll see like 5 or 6 bodies, like literally, like, I don't know if they're dead bodies or they're just fentanyl overdoses or they're just asleep, like people who are barefoot and filthy under a blanket. And that's like, you know, within a quarter mile of me, I see so many. And so you can't escape. There's no escape. And I just saw Karen Bass, the LA mayor. I'm not technically in LA City. I'm in LA County. She was going on TV bragging about how homelessness is down. There's fewer homelessness. There's not. And that's total bullshit. I mean, that's just total bullshit. There's more than ever. And everywhere you go under every overpass, it's filled with tents. Nothing ever changes. It's nasty. And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people I went to a fundraiser in Beverly Hills for this guy who wants to save California, and he wants to run for governor, and he wants to, you know, he has this whole foundation, like, we have to save California. Like, we can't just let it go. Can't just let California go. California was a red state. You know, it was Reagan, it was Nixon's from here. We had just, you know, so it was so Republican, really. And it was, and half the state still is. But I don't know if I go through this every day. Do I get out? Is it worth staying? Is it a lost cause? Is it just going to get worse and worse? And I'm going to be trapped, like stuck here forever. It's a bummer, man, but the weather's great. So we have that.
California is just one of those. It is just kind of like an incredible state in that anyone who's ever driven along like the, you know, Pacific Coast Highway, you travel through different, like, complete like ecosystems. You know, it's like you're totally going. And we have my wife and I, we have family in the Irvine area, and every time we go, it's like, this is an incredible place.
Weather.
And my friend at the end of which month? The end of August, he's getting married in Santa Barbara, which is just that'll
be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. And when I lived in New York, when I lived in California, a lot of people think there's like this, either you have to love one or the other, like you can't love both. And I guess maybe me and my wife were just among the few that, you know, we loved living in both. Like we just had such a great time, in California. And then we left because of, employment and family and stuff like that. Yeah. But to look back and to see, what's become of so many parts of it, it's not only like, the place that we loved has changed so much, but it's also like you described, driving by bodies. That's just awful. Just like if you were to see bodies anywhere, it'd be like, my God, this is terrible for humanity.
And like the sad thing is that if you are like someone who drives by and thinks, I should make a phone call, I should help that person shouldn't be laying there getting sunburned, filthy, covered in urine, whatever, that makes you a bad person. Right. The good people are the ones who can drive by and walk by and step over them and say nothing to anybody and never complain about it. I once called like 311, there was a guy passed out in like the grass median, face down, outside our local little like library where I would sometimes take my little kids, like walk to the library. And he was like face down in the grass. And I was like, what? Right across from an elementary school, like between the library and the elementary school. I was like, this is not okay. So I call 311 and the local police, whatever, picked up, and she yelled at me and she scolded me. And she's like, ma'am, it is not illegal to sleep on the grass. And I was like, well, I don't know if he's asleep or maybe he could be having an overdose. Like, I don't know if he's alive. She's like, how dare you say he's on drugs? You don't know that. And like, she yelled at me for trying to get someone to check on this man. Okay. Because how dare I want to be able to take my children to the library and expect there to be no bodies to step over? What kind of white privilege do I think I have, And it was just like, all right, well, you're going to get a lot more bodies. Okay, enjoy. This is the policy. There's not going to be ever any end to it.
Yeah.
And at what point, though, will people, I keep thinking every year there's an election in LA, finally people will be so tired of like their cars getting broken into by meth heads, and they're like copper wiring getting stolen or whatever, or what are the things in the cars they're stealing, carburetors or
catalytic converters.
Yeah. I don't know what those are. Okay, I have no idea.
No idea what they do.
Okay, good, right. But like at some point will people be so sick of it that they'll like finally vote for like a Republican? And like, no, they never will. They never would do that. It's so weird. People are voting again and again against their own interests, against their own like physical safety. I don't get it. And we're super outnumbered here. And maybe you feel outnumbered where you are too. I don't know. It's so weird being so deep behind enemy lines. But maybe it's like makes us more powerful in some way. I don't know. What do you think? Where you live, what is it like there?
Well, we live in kind of like a smaller town, so it's in New Jersey. So we have people. It's a mix of like Democrats and Republicans, and there's been like some drama I think over the years, like even before we got here, when it came to I think COVID and masking was a big thing, and then the school board stuff. So it's kind of like boom, culture war. Stuff right there. So that'll be like an ongoing thing, but they're not as difficult as I thought it was to get a gun in my neck of the woods in New Jersey. So that's fun. That's nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a boy. I had a gender reveal party for
your gun. In Manhattan, can you not get a gun? Like only the bad guys can have guns in Manhattan. Like I don't even know how it works, but
I try. Yeah, I think you might be able to get something for like home defense, like maybe like a shotgun. I don't know how hard it is to get a handgun license, but to carry is extremely difficult. You have to jump through like
too.
Yeah, and I know somebody who was trying to go through the process, and he's like they wanted. He owns a business, and they wanted I don't know how many years of tax returns, to prove to prove that you carry cash on you, and it's so it's that sort of thing. So and I think New York is New York City in particular is one of those cities that is just gonna say fuck you to every Supreme Court ruling that comes in in favor of gun rights and. So there's that. One question I wanted to ask you is, so forever, like you were, there's the picture that you use on Twitter. Who is that of?
It's Mary Magdalene.
Oh, it's Mary Magdalene. Okay.
Mary Magdalene.
There we go. So for as long as I've known you and followed you, you've been the picture of Mary Magdalene and Peachy Keenan. When did you decide to like show your face? I still don't know your real name, and I'm fine with that. But it's like here you are. You're in the flesh.
I know, it's so funny. I'm like half doxxed. My face is out, but not my real name all the way. Well, it wasn't my choice. So my book came out last June 2023, and it's part of like when you write a book for a publisher, they want you to go promote your book, right? And so they were booking me on all this stuff, and they booked me, and I was like, well, I don't know about revealing myself. And they were like, well, what if we tell you that we booked you on Tucker Carlson's show when he was on Fox? And I was like, well, for Tucker, I'll do it, Okay. They're like, yeah, you got to do it. So I was like, so super nervous because I had like super like stage fright, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go on TV and everyone's going to see who I am and what will happen. And will I get my house burned down? Or I was just nervous. And then Tucker got fired like 2 weeks later from Fox. I can't take the blame for that. I don't know if that's why they fired him.
People will blame you.
Right.
My viewers will blame you.
Yeah, they found out that I was booked. And I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm off the hook. Like, I don't have to do this reveal. And they were like, no, you have to do it. Like, this is part of selling a book. And so I had to go on Fox last June. And then I got booked on all this other stuff. And I've been on Fox now a bunch of times. And you just kind of go on the circuit, like promoting. You wrote the book, you know, you're like, I spent all this time writing this damn book. I might as well try to sell it, you know, like that's how you kind of get in this mindset. So I wasn't like super happy about it, but now I'm sort of used to it. And it's funny how like my like real name is still not like widely known. I'm less concerned about OPSEC though now, because I feel like the sting of being canceled is sort of so much less than it was when I started writing as Peachy Keenan in 2019. I was writing for a big studio, like one of the biggest Hollywood studios at the time. And I knew that if they knew like who I was, like I was this spooky, scary, like right winger, I would be like, not only fired. Okay. Firing would be the least they could do to me. They would have like physically harmed me. They would have like ruined me. They would have like, you know, pledged to my death. Like it would have been really nasty. Like these people are crazy. Okay. They're communists. Everyone I work with is basically a communist or a socialist. Okay. At a big mainstream Hollywood studio. What a surprise. And so I was like very, very scared all the time that I would be doxxed, that my real name, what if they found out who I was? Now I feel like the sting, what are we like 4 or 5 years later, that sting is so much decreased that if my name, first of all, I no longer work there. I can't really be fired from anything. I work for myself now.
Right.
For better or worse. Okay. And, you know, it was nice getting a paycheck while it lasted. But there's just so much less power now in like being doxxed as a Twitter anon or whatever, which is nice, which is like, progress sort of in a way that people are less, people feel bolder about it, about expressing their opinions and not being, and if they get doxxed, you get like your 15 minutes of hate and then you just move on. And it's actually kind of works for you. Sometimes you get more followers and like, people are like, great. Like that line in Goodfellas when Henry Hill gets arrested for the first time, all the guys come and say, you broke your cherry, you know, it's like that.
Right. And he kept his mouth shut. He didn't,
that's right.
He didn't rat anybody out.
You don't rat anybody out. That's right.
Well, there's been a number of accounts where the account owners have been doxxed. And I think there've been like a lot of dudes publishing like, you know, kind of right-wing conservative stuff. And what's so funny with those doxings is that they end up doxing these guys and they turn out to be like really good looking, cool dudes. You know, it's like, they're not even uggos. Like you would think like, oh, it's like here's like an ugly guy pretending to be, you know, an alpha male. And it's like, oh, these are the guys who, you know, you can't allow near your girlfriend. Like, get out of here.
Yeah. It's such great revenge. The best revenge is being like basically normal and like basically, you know, you look like, you almost could be a liberal, you know, you look like someone who would be fun at a party. You look like someone that you would want to maybe hang out with. And that is like the best revenge, is that they think we walk around with like horns and like, you know, fangs or whatever, but we're just, you know, we're just having fun and we're just regular people walking. Yeah. We're right-wing extremists walking around like regular people.
Yeah. So with the, you know, so your book's been out for a little bit, and the subtitle, you know, Practical Guide to Winning the Culture War. Yeah. It seems like, I mean, do you think we are, I'm going to put myself on, I think we're on the same side. Are we winning this culture war?
I think that, you know, after I wrote the book, everyone was asking me that. And I was like, well, I better like say we are winning it, because otherwise what was the point of the book? Right. Sure. So, but I wasn't sure, because I kept seeing all these surveys and studies that said like young women are just even more to the left. Like they're so committed to like liberal, progressive feminism that they're just like going more and more extreme. Whereas young men were going the opposite way. Like on the graph, the two lines are going like this, like young men becoming much more conservative than the young women. And there's this huge gap, political gap between like Zoomer men and Zoomer girls. Like college age women are left-wing feminists, but college age guys are much more likely to be, you know, based or whatever. And that has been my experience. But that's okay, because I don't think that women need to be these like base right-wing shitlords on Twitter. Like, that's not something that matters. And like, women shouldn't be doing that. Like, I do it for fun. Like, for me, it's just like a fun thing I do. Like, I'm kind of like out of, dating game. Like, I'm old now. Right. So
you're 5 kids. You're 5 kids outside of dating. Yeah.
I can do whatever I want. Like, I'm free of that. But I think that, so men should not be looking for like these, super political, high chart, politicized women necessarily. But they should also not be looking for like hardcore fanatic left-wingers. I think a lot of women, for a lot of young women, these beliefs are very like lightly held. They're just like inch deep to fit in with the friends. Like, sure, yeah. But if they met the right guy, and this is what happened to me, if they meet the right guy who's like, let's say he is already on the right and he kind of gets what he wants and wants to, he could, woo that girl and kind of charm her out of her like lightly held feminist beliefs and turn her back into like a normal woman. So are we winning? I think that the answer this year seems to be kind of like yes, especially with the young people, with Zoomers. I mean, I think millennials are sort of a lost cause. They're just, I don't really get them. Zoomers, though, I think are winning. And I think even the kids, like the Generation Alpha or whatever they're called, they seem to be, I mean, just as a little white pill, when I was like, oh my gosh, maybe we are winning, was during the debate on Thursday, or whenever it was, we were watching it, but like my 13-year-old was on his like, some Minecraft server, like playing his little video game with his friends. And he said there was all these young boys, like 13 or 14-year-old boys from all over the country and the world on this server or whatever. And during the debate, all these like preteen boys were sharing really mean Joe Biden memes, like posting photos of him looking old and stupid and like making fun of Joe Biden. All the boys were like enjoying this laugh at the expense of this poor old guy. And I was like, that was very interesting to me. That was very interesting to me that the 13-year-old boys like see through all of it and they know what to laugh at. And so I think we are winning. And I think, I don't know, I'm very hopeful. There's still a lot wrong, but it does feel like the tide has sort of turned in terms of like transing children, like people are like waking up to that and becoming radicalized, I think, because of it.
Yeah, I think I've definitely, felt over the past few years that I think thanks in part to like Elon Musk taking over Twitter and making it X, even though I still call it Twitter. He should have kept it as Twitter.
I agree.
But I think, the conversations that are being had there, I think are important. I mean, granted, with that, comes, there's been, the amount of like, racist and anti-Semitic stuff I've seen, like, sure, that's there, but it's more of, I sometimes I wonder, am I a magnet for it? Because there's that For You tab. And I'm like, am I only seeing this stuff because I actually engage with it, whether to mock it or, or whatnot. But I think it's an indication when people are feeling a lot more comfortable talking about controversial subjects and saying what they really feel about it and not being, so afraid to speak out publicly about it.
Yeah, there has been a lot of anti-Semitism. And all the rest of it. And I just block, I use the block very liberally. And maybe it is an indication that free speech, look, if you're a free speech absolutist, you like kind of have to be okay with people saying a lot of stuff that you're not going to like. Right? Yeah. Like they don't want like what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything like that. But if I say there's only 2 genders, that might upset a lot of people. Like I'm a bigot now, right? Yeah. So, but I think just the anti-Semite stuff really came, that was like in the wake of October 7th. And I actually was surprised because I'm seeing how much of it is coming from the quote far right. Like I had heard, people on the far right, like they hate Israel or whatever. I'm like, I never saw any of like, I don't know. I was like sort of in my little bubble and whatever, talking about, funny stuff, making jokes on Twitter. I just kind of dismissed that as like not real, but it is real. And when I wrote this article about I call them the Hamas kids on campus. I call them the Zoomerwaffen. And like the Waffen SS, like these sort of like Hitler shock troops, but they're Zoomers, but they're far left, they're liberal, whatever. And in the course of writing the article, I, full disclosure, told people, well, I'm half Jewish. Okay. I'm a Catholic convert, but like, yeah, I'm like half Jewish. Sorry. Okay. And most people were like fine with that. No big deal. That's fine. But I would get like these comments from like people I didn't know this was a thing, like actual neo-Nazis, like real neo-Nazis being like, you're a dirty Jew.
Yep.
I was like,
yep.
What?
That
Okay.
That explains it. Exactly. Sometimes,
like,
you'll see. It's just like I've seen comments, like someone will make like a reasonable post, and then right under it's just like Jew, like that.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, because when I grew up, I'm 42, and when I was a kid, I grew up, around people who use the word Jew as like a put down, as a derogatory term, like, oh, you're this. And then, as I got older and gotten away from that, I tell them like, people call me that. I'm like, well, thanks for the compliment. That's how I take it. I mean, God, the amount of Jews in my life who I absolutely adore, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be part of the tribe. Why not?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I just, I was surprised. And then these two neo-Nazi guys actually did a whole podcast about me. And really? calling me this like Yenta and like all these mean. And I was like, Yenta, all right, that's like a Karen. It's like Jewish Karen. Yeah. I'll take it. Okay, it's fine.
Well, I love the idea of neo-Nazis speaking Yiddish too.
I know. How do they know that?
Yeah, they're like, look, when the race war comes, we are going to schlep all the way to Manhattan and take out,
Oy vey. We're working so hard. Oy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing about all those like right-wing guys who've been getting doxxed the last year is that it's like a joke now. It's like a running joke that like almost all of them are like at least part Jewish.
Yeah.
And which is very funny. And so there's like this running joke among like me and these other guys, like that like Mischling power. So Mischling is a word like, it's like when you're like a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
And it was originally like a word the Nazis used, right? So we're like reclaiming it as like this funny thing. Like we're just like all mixed, I'm like an Ellis Island mutt from everywhere, And I was actually speaking of Barry Weiss, I was actually at a book party for her wife, Nellie, with Barry and Nellie. I got to go to this fun party. And I was talking to Barry and I mentioned like I was a Mischling, okay? And Barry got really offended. And she was like, you can't say Mischling. That's like saying you're an octoroon.
Mulata.
I was like, yeah, mulata. I was like, oh, okay. Like I found, again, that's why I'm always getting in a little bit of trouble. Like I tend to, I'll say something I think is just like a funny joke. And there's always someone who's like, oh no, can't say that. But I have no problem with it. So anyone who wants to call me a Mischling is welcome to call me that. Sorry, Barry.
I did the 23andMe, and I have 0.0 Ashkenazi, but I have to have some Sephardic because I'm over like 90% from like Portugal, Spain, and I'm like, come on, there's a rabbi who snuck in.
There's some drops in you for sure. There's some drops. You got a little bite.
I want the clout. I want that.
It nicked you.
Exactly. That's incredible. Well, you are you still doing a lot of your writing for? Is it the American Conservative? Is that? I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, I write a column like once a month for the American Mind, which is part of
American Mind. Excuse me.
AmericanMind.org. I also write occasionally for like the Federalist. I do most of my writing now though is on Substack, which has been fun. And I'm also starting another book. I'm supposed to be doing that now. While I'm talking to you, I'm a little behind.
Start it. We'll just, as you're writing, I'll just jump in every now and then.
But the other thing I want to talk to you about is comedy, because I also love writing things like, scripts and comedy and stuff, and like dabbling in that stuff. And I wrote like a sitcom pilot a few years ago, and I just pitched a sitcom pilot to a big, conservative network. But I wanted to ask you about comedy and what is, from your expert point of view, what's the state of comedy these days, like in terms of politics? Like how has it affected you or your career?
Yeah, I think Jerry Seinfeld recently was asked about that, about
Yeah.
kind of wokeness, which is kind of like political correctness and that sort of thing. And one of the things that he said is that the real pushback, or the one place where it really hasn't been affected, has been stand-up comedy. And it's like, all you need is a microphone and an audience, and you say whatever you want. And I totally agree with that. And I also think the other places, like, online content, there's so much really funny stuff that's being, made and put out online, whether it's, people who have, Substacks, or, other, on other, platforms. But I do think that it's definitely, when it comes to, like mainstream, like comedy, like streaming and stuff like that, I think not as much comedy is being made. And I think you could actually measure that. And the stuff that is being made, there's not so much that is actually, hitting it out of the park. I mean, there's a reason why, South Park and Curb Your Enthusiasm and Always Sunny, they're still doing their thing. And people will point to them and say, like, what are you talking about? Comedy? There's no comedy nowadays. They're doing it. It's like, yeah, because they've been doing it for like 20 years, Right. So, one of the hopes that I have is, just as a comedian and as a fan of comedy, is that I want the mainstream to get back into taking chances on comedy, for sure. And it's stuff like the sketch comedy that I do. So I do a number of things where it's like me talking to my phone, where it's like a character. It's like, it's okay that it looks shitty.
Yeah, right.
But
good.
the stuff, but the stuff that I like to do is, being able to, do sketches with like high production value, where it looks really good. So if we're doing a parody of an action film, like, it looks like an action film. Like, people are like, oh my God, this could be, you could see this on the screen. Right. And, to do that, it's just, it just costs money. Like I had an idea for a sketch, and I pitched it to a company, and they didn't want to do it. It was a little too hot for them. And I'll tell you that the idea was, it was in response to that guy who set himself on fire, Aaron Bushnell. And it was me. I was going to be playing a guy like that who was setting himself on fire, but he does it for climate change. And then his friends come out and then put him out, and they're like, dude, you can't set yourself on fire for climate change. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You have to, like, if you set yourself on fire, it has to be for this one thing. It has to be for Gaza. Like, that's it.
I love it.
and I was so excited about it. Like, I wrote the script, and I was all, ready to go. And they're like, no, we don't want to do it. And I'm like, fine, I'm going to do it myself. And then I started adding up how much it would cost. And I'm like, fine, I'm not going to do it myself. So it's like,
right.
Maybe one day I could do it, but, until then it's a little cost prohibitive.
Right. I mean, that's like the stumbling block that everyone keeps running into. Like, everyone's just like, well, why do you need someone to, pay for your sitcom? Just make it yourself. Like, you have an iPhone.
Yeah.
I'm like, right. Like, who's going to watch my iPhone shot sitcom? Like, how's that going to work? Like, with me as all the characters. Like, no, there's no one who's going to watch that. No one.
Right.
And like, then they'll be like, well, just about AI, use AI image, like AI. I'm like, well, that doesn't, like, okay, like, AI is maybe fine for like making your like logo or like whatever image for an article, but they can't have characters who talk and are funny, and then you need voices, and so we're nowhere near like bringing down the cost of like production, and so you still kind of you're still kind of like stuck relying on the same big money networks who can fund these things. And when you're like in this little like weird niche right-wing ghetto content world like I am, it's really tough. It's tough to be like, well, what if the Daily Wire says no, which they will? Like, then there's nowhere else to go. Yeah,
it's a tough spot to be in, and then you also wonder, like, what are they looking for too? Like, is this
They don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do they want something in their voice? What is their voice, especially if they're just kind of starting out doing features and comedy and stuff like that? How many, how much risk is going to go into it? And then, I wonder too, with, kind of like with the election, coming up, if a lot of people who, might be willing to fund the arts, on the right are saying like, oh no, if I have a few $1 million, it's got to go towards, beating Joe Biden, or like that,
Right. You could do both. But I mean, like in a perfect world, for example, Lou, you would be starring in like the #1 family sitcom on TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, you are perfect for that. Like that's like who it would be, right? Someone like you or you. And I see all this talent that's like sitting out there, like waiting around for the money to come or this to come. And that's why I started this development company, because I'm like, well, someone's gotta, I don't know. There's so much talent. No, there's no lack of talent and no lack of great ideas or jokes. And like the funny people are all on our side. But institutionally, there's no backing. And I think that has to change the politics. I do think culture comes first. And I think if you had all these all this comedy that could break down like political barriers or could make it okay to make fun of wokeness or to make fun of Joe Biden or to make fun of stupid things, like it would be much easier then to present like a better worldview or like a political ideology. But I really do feel like comedy kind of has to come first, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk more about your development thing and how long you've been working on it and all that?
Sure. So yeah, we wrote this sitcom pilot a few years ago, and like I realized like, well, there's no one to make anything like this. And these writers would come out of the woodwork and be like, I'm in hiding, I'm in Hollywood, like, can I work with you? What are you doing? I'm like, well, nothing right now. Like, I'm just tweeting. Like, I don't have any. And so I started this development company called Lost Riviera. And the idea is that it would be, just development, like not production. Okay. Right. But like, all these big studios, all the big networks and Netflix, they have these development executives that develop the story, that come up with the idea, that find, that writer, and, this book, we can adapt this book, or what about this idea? And they develop these things and, and they package them together. And then someone goes and makes it. Okay. I haven't solved the like who makes it part yet, but right. I really do believe that if you have the right idea, the right story, that it will attract the money or the backing or whoever it is. I really believe that with all my heart, but no one's doing it. And so like, for example, if you write a script and you want to be a screenwriter or you want to be a TV writer, you can't break in now unless if you don't meet the like DEI checklist. Right. And I hear this, my brother's a filmmaker. He can't get movies into Sundance because he's a white male as a director. Like because they give you a checklist. Are you trans director? Are you, furry? Are you non-binary? They don't want a like cisgendered white guy. Well, you know what?
It sounds like your brother doesn't want it enough, because if he did, he would be a transgender furry.
That's true.
Like that.
True. I think you're right. Like, how bad do you want this kid? So there's no path. And I hear this from like novelists, they went to like the Iowa writers, workshop, but they can't get a novel even looked at because they're a white guy, and the publishing industry is not interested. They want, diverse voices or whatever. And so people are kind of stuck and creatively stuck. And it just feels like all this talent is just like sitting. But imagine if we could be making like things that could compete against, big movies or hit TV shows or comedies or whatever, and not just be, but we have Lady Ballers, but what about Lady Ballers, Peachy? Haven't you seen Lady Ballers? I'm like, okay, we gotta like not, okay, we gotta go beyond Lady Ballers, is my point.
Right.
Nothing wrong with Lady Ballers. It's fine, but we have to like ascend.
Right. And, and there's something too, just thinking about, how many great scripts, how many great stories, how many great books are out there sitting on somebody's shelf and they're not being looked at because of the identity stuff, which is a real thing. I mean,
it is.
In my book, I have one chapter where I was going through all of these, sort of diversity, DEI specifications that in all these different industries. So it's like the airlines, one airline wanted to have like 50% of like people of color or women of color or something like that. I guess pilots. It's like, what? And then like a similar thing in the writer's room. And then, what I got from that, I was like, wait a minute, like, even if like your intentions were the best in the world, like, I don't think you have enough people to do this, because it's going to be crazy when like you have like this Black woman who needs to like fly planes for Delta during the day. And then she has to moonlight as a friggin', as a writer on like some shitty sitcom so everybody can meet their DEI requirements,
Right. She's doing all the DEI jobs.
All the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, and then you get like, man, it's like it's like slavery. What the hell that these people are doing?
That's right. We're putting all the work on these diversity hires. That's right. Yeah. It is like a new form of slavery. Yeah. Well, the white guys can sit back on unemployment because no one will hire them.
Like that, smoking their cigars, smoking their privilege.
That's right. Let the people of color do all the work now.
That's right. You heard it here. You heard it here first.
That's right.
Peachy,
wow, that's a great way to look at it. It's so funny.
Yeah, Peachy Keenan, thank you so much for your time. One more time, and I absolutely love this cover. Domestic Extremist, a practical guide to winning the culture war. And now I want to watch your son lift 600 pounds because that's just insane.
It's pretty. I'll send you the link. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and awesome. So yeah, guys, check out Peachy's stuff. She's an awesome follow everywhere: Substack, Twitter, and definitely pick up her book.